Hi folks, Dave Schmidt here. It's Monday, June 29th as I'm bringing you the message today, and this is in preparation for the weekly newsletter and the radio program in 2 days on July 1st. Last week, I told you that I would be bringing you a guest on my program this week that would help us work through what is called a debt elimination program. Now, before I get into that, I want to share some of the things that I'm bringing to you on the video this week. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of why we are where we are and why I think this is something that may be beneficial for you, but also my guest, David Fairmont, will also let you know it's not necessarily for everybody. It's a program that each person needs to make the decision for themselves. But the real issue is, how did we get here? So what I'm going to do this week, I'm going to share with you clips from a 2-hour video from Michael Tellinger, and you can find this on YouTube. And Michael is a cultural anthropologist that basically brings to us the history of over 6,000 to 8,000 years ago about how money came about, where it came from, and how we got into the position that we are in. And he is also a community activist in his hometown in South Africa. And you will see that he has taken on the banking systems, taking them into court in his home country, and has had the banks admit openly in court where they are lying, cheating, and committing fraud. And then the second thing I'll do, I'll bring a short interview with David Fairmont, my guest, on the radio program on Wednesday night, and we give you an introduction to his debt elimination program, why it is completely legal, how it works, and how in 13 years of history that he's been running this program, he has a 100% success rate with no retaliation whatsoever from the banks or any form of the legal industry. Well, how did we really get here? Well, let me take a step back. Most of you have heard my story. When I finished being a senator in the legislature in 2006, in 2007 I went into a real estate development project with a friend of mine. It was looking absolutely wonderful. Everything was good. The banks were lining up and even wanting to compete with who was going to give us the loan. And I was well on my way to what I would call some financial freedom. Well, within a year after that, the crash in 2008 came. And when that crash came, it crashed me as well. I had put everything I had into this program. And basically I'd come to a point, you've heard my story, that I had to file bankruptcy and I lost my home to foreclosure. But looking back, that was probably the blessing in disguise, because what I learned, it was the start of me waking up. I stepped into this and I said, what really happened here? And it was there that I discovered what I would call the slavery system, the financial slavery system of what is called the international banking cartel that runs the lending industry, not only in the United States, but all around the world. What I realized was that this banking cartel had set up a deliberate, what is called pump and dump. They pump up the economy, pump up the debt, where literally millions and millions of people buy homes, and using the subprime lending mechanism, that they had millions and millions of people who were buying homes on real estate loans that they absolutely knew in 3 years when they had to refinance, there was no way they were going to be able to reafford those real estate loans. So what it had done, it had says, give me the money, let me make the millions now, pump up the debt, and literally get scores of millions of people in debt beyond their ability to recover when the system crashes. So as a pump and dump, it's pump up the debt, crash the economy. They make millions as millions of people, everyday people, become enslaved to financial debt. We are living in a world where it's the excessive financial debt that is basically crumbling our empire. What we're going to see, in my opinion, is the United States is not going to fall from without. The United States will very likely have a fall from within of the excessive debt. The United States as a country is so deeply in debt that it will never, ever, ever be able to recover through the normal means of what is called a financial recovery or through taxation. It will never happen. So therefore, this is a system that they can only kick the can down the road for so long before it's going to crash. And last week, I talked about the upcoming currency collapse. I brought you the notable authors of G. Edward Griffin and Jim Rickards and Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, all notable experts in the field who all say it is coming, it is inevitable. And in this crash, it will once more be the extreme wealthy banking cartel elite will become more wealthy while you and I, the everyday people, become victims of their system. We will find our purchasing power lost. We will find ourselves once again into a form of financial slavery. Money and finances for over 6,000 years has been a malicious form to keep what is called the everyday folks oppressed in a form of slavery. When I experienced that, I was in some ways determined to say, what could I do? I realized I had become a victim of the system. Now, I'm not going to turn around and blame them. I am responsible. I was responsible for what happened to me, and I took that responsibility. But I also said I will never allow that to happen to me again. I'm not going to allow myself to become a victim of this financial slavery system. Financial slavery is oppressive. It's amazing how it destroys us of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the very things that our Constitution says that we have a right toward. It keeps people in a position where they are not free. It keeps people in a position where they don't get to pursue their dreams, the things that bring about the joy and the happiness in their lives. It keeps us in a position where we can be stuck, and we can't move, and we can't be mobile. We can't be free to help others. And then it keeps some people in a form of oppression that creates a depression that can take years to recover from, if ever. Few things have the quiet form of a deep oppression other than financial slavery. And there are millions and millions of us that are in that position. Other forms of financial oppression is that you could be stuck in a job and you have no mobility. You have no ability to improve yourself. You don't have an ability to grow. You don't have an ability to pursue your dreams, the things of your heart. All of those are things that as human beings should be our absolute right. So what I'm going to do this week, I'm going to introduce you to a debt elimination program that works. It is completely successful, and you will hear from David Fairmont that in 13 years of running this program, his success rate, 100%. Now he defines that as saying in his 13 years, he has never, ever had anybody come back to him and say, this didn't work. You will hear his story, how 13 years ago he freed himself of over $50,000 of credit card debt that was just written off by the bank. You heard last week on my radio program, and you will hear again this week, that Charla, my sweetheart and partner, she has just freed herself from $23,000 of credit card debt. Now, how does this do this? This program is completely different than almost anything else that is out there. There are some programs that are very good, and there are some programs that are very successful, but here's what's different. In this program, what David does, he gives you the information and the tools and the letters that you send to the bank, what we call the pretender lending institutions, and the credit reporting agencies. And in that, what you're doing, you're not challenging the debt, you're challenging the fraud. Because these banks, by law, are technically committing fraud. See, when a bank loans you money, by contract, they are supposed to be loaning you money from something they already have, and they're supposed to be working within the context of what is called fractional reserve lending. But they're not doing that. When they give you a credit card, they're not taking from what they already have. They're creating this money out of thin air and just giving it to you, and they don't even touch what is called the fractional reserve lending amount. That's fraud. In anybody's book, that is fraud. Not only it is fraud, it's what is creating the excessive debt It's what's creating the mounting inflation, and it is what is creating the system that is going to bring us all down in this currency collapse. And David Fairmont has says we don't have to be victims anymore. By challenging the fraud, the banks don't want to touch the request that you are sending to them. They would rather just write it off than be able to answer what you have asked them to do. You're asking them to prove that the money that they loaned to you was legal. Now again, we will go into depth in this in the radio program that we bring on Wednesday night. I would really encourage you to listen to that program. You also, here on the website, you will see the link to the site that you can go to that David Fairmont has for what is called the Liberty Debt Elimination Program. And there you can sign up for it and to be able to free yourself from unsecured debt. Now, why am I saying this? Am I here just trying to get out of something that I don't want to take responsibility for? No, I'm not. Because, see, I've always paid off, other than when I had to file my bankruptcy, I've always paid off my credit cards, and I've always paid them on time. But I also realized that I had become a victim of a fraudulent system that they absolutely knew was going to collapse, and they knew what it was going to do. You've got this elite cartel banking system that work in an oppressive manner of about power and control, and they do all of it at the expense of the everyday folks like you and me. And it's almost like what they say is, we don't really care what it does to you. We don't care about how much we keep you in debt. We don't care about how much we oppress you. And we really don't care how much you become enslaved to this system, as long as we make our millions and our billions and we stay in power and control. And we are heading for a financial collapse, that is very likely to happen again. And in the resources that I gave you, all of them said one of the first things that you should want to do is to get out of debt. Free yourself from this oppressive system. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. But let me just make one comment. From the banking's perspective, it really isn't any different to them whether you file bankruptcy or you do the debt elimination program, because to them it's basically the same. The account is written off. And don't feel sorry for the bank. They get all their money. When you purchase an item, the merchant has been paid, and the bank will basically make sure they get reimbursed for that should you fall. See, so should you basically close your account and eliminate your debt. The only thing the bank is losing is the fraudulent interest that they are gaining from you and me, and the millions and millions of dollars that they are receiving in a fraudulent manner. Now, David Fairmont will tell you that this system is totally backed up by a Supreme Court decision that says if they loan you money in a fraudulent manner, you are by law not obligated to pay it back. So here's what we can do. We can take a choice and say, I can just keep doing what I'm doing, and in so doing what I'm doing, I'm aiding the fraudulent system of the bankers. I am allowing them to become more powerful and more wealthy, and in the process, I'm keeping myself a victim, and I'm also all my neighbors, all my friends, all my family, I'm aiding them in staying in that position as well. We can all choose to do that. Or we can make a choice, and we can say, no more. We're not going to allow this corrupt, fraudulent banking system to continue to enslave us. When you look through history, when groups of people, organizations, whether it's racial, whether it's ethical, whether it's ethnic, or whether it's financial, when people deliver themselves from slavery, it always takes a group of people in the beginning to stand up and say, I don't have to be a slave. I don't have to be oppressed. I don't have to live this way. I can free myself and I can help others do it. So I would encourage you to watch the rest of this video. You're going to see the comments from Michael Tellinger, and you're going to see where he talks about the history of money, how it came about, and how it has always been a design, going back close to 6,000 years, to use money as a malicious form to keep the masses in a form of slavery and under their control. You will see how he has taken on the legal system and the banking system in his home country in South Africa, and then you'll hear the short interview with David Fairmont and myself. You're going to enjoy this week's program, folks. And then I would encourage you to listen to the radio program, to join us on Wednesday night, and then to call in with your questions and your comments and be able to step up, if you feel this is for you, to step up and to be able to take the action to free yourself from the debt through a program that is completely legal and it works. Thank you a lot. Thank you very, very much. Love all of you and look forward to seeing you on the radio program on Wednesday night. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Okay, folks, let's enjoy these video clips from Michael Tellinger.
We are all born on this beautiful planet, and we're all born free, and yet we cannot move around freely. We cannot live where we choose to. We have to follow rules and laws that we didn't agree to when we were born. We have to work to pay taxes and to earn this thing called money. We didn't agree to that either when we were born. We didn't agree to be given a number and be treated like a corporation. We are living, breathing human beings. We're not numbers of infinite soul and flesh and blood. And yet that's not how we're being treated. The restrictions on humanity are endless, and they're getting worse by the day. The current situation is very simple. Every socio-political system has failed us. This is why we're in this mess. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about this stuff, right? If it was hunky-dory. Humans everywhere live in misery. There seems to be no happy outcome to the political and economic mess of the planet. Every year, every month, it gets worse. More poverty, more hunger, more homelessness, more misery. The global economic collapse is imminent. The fact that we still have a global economic system is actually miraculous, but it is a clear indication how powerful those individuals are that control the global economy. They have infinite power as it is now. Only us, only we can do something about it. And there's some simple things that we can do about it to change everything about our lives and how we continue living as living, breathing human beings and not numbers and corporations. This is where we get back to what we've just been to, the ancient civilizations. A small group of royal political families and the banking elite families took control of the world. This didn't happen last year or 100 years ago. This happened thousands of years ago, people. It started with the Sumerians about 6,000 years ago in the Middle East, in Sumeria. When the Sumerian tablets tell us, when kingdom was lowered to earth from heaven, that's why I pointed it out to you. They tell us, kingdom was lowered to earth. Suddenly we see these priest kings appear out of nowhere. How did these guys suddenly took on this higher than thou situation? Who the hell are they? Where did they come from? Oh, people lived happily, and suddenly one guy said, hold on, I'm going to be your king. You're going to have to work for me and pay taxes. Screw you, buddy. I don't know. So how did these priest kings in ancient times become so powerful? Because they were appointed by the gods. I'm not talking about God with a big G here. I'm talking about the gods with a small g, these arrogant pricks that came here and disturbed us on this beautiful planet. And what happened next after they appointed the priest kings? The most spectacular, miraculous thing happened. These priest kings created money. Money is not part of natural evolution. This is a complete misunderstanding of human history. Anyone that teaches you that has not done their homework. Money was maliciously introduced in ancient times as a tool of enslavement, the absolute tool of enslavement, and we are feeling the worst brunt of it right now. We are the guys, we are the civilization, we are the people in the history of this planet right now that can make a change. It's up to us what we do with this information and how we move from here forward. The settlement in Basel, Switzerland, most people aren't even aware that there's a thing called the Bank of International Settlement. When they discover this, what? Wow, that's amazing. I hope they're good people. Can't they give us a loan? Remember, people, money doesn't exist. There is no thing as money. In fact, for those of you that know, I've been actively involved in legal cases in South Africa against the banks. Not just the banks, against the central bank, the South African Reserve Bank, the Minister of Finance as well. I've even opened up a constitutional court case against the banks, the Minister of Finance, and the Reserve Bank, which had an interesting ending. If we have time, we can talk about that. But it doesn't stop. 2 years ago, myself and a small group of other people, mostly Scott Kundal, started asking the banks certain questions. And we couldn't get answers out of them. And then we started doing research and realizing how it all works. And for the fractional reserve system, you all know that, or you should know that. And the fact that money doesn't exist. In fact, but nevertheless, what we managed to do in the 3 Supreme Court cases that I defended myself against these banksters, we managed to get very important things out of the lawyers or the bankers. They admitted to everything we accused them of. We accused them of breaking the contract law because they don't have what they pretend to loan. They don't have the money. Remember, in contract law, you can't lend something that you do not possess. So that was one of our arguments. So we said, well, the banks aren't actually banks because they don't own any money. And they admitted, yes, no, we don't own any money. So, okay, great. Judge, did you get that? And then we said, well, that means that you're an agent and you're not a banker, so you can't charge interest and you can't come after me because the contract is null and void.
Okay, and let's now listen to this short interview with my upcoming radio program guest, David Fairmont. Hi folks, this is Dave Schmidt. What I'm going to do here is give you a brief introduction to the radio program guest that I'm going to have on this Wednesday. His name is David Fairmont. He runs a program called Liberty Debt Elimination. Now, I had referred to that a little bit on last week's program, but let me give you a little bit of a background. David lives basically in another part of the country and had attended one of my workshops last year. And he had mentioned to me who he was, and I had to admit I was kind of busy and stuff like that, so I kind of brushed it by, but I said thank you very much. But he had also given one of his cards to Charla. And Charla kind of had it there for a little bit, and she realized, she had been praying for what was called supernatural debt elimination. So she called him up. She told me about the program, and I have to admit, I was a little bit skeptical because it says, I've kind of heard about stuff like this, and I was really wondering, what's the reality here? Well, bless her heart, she went ahead and went forth with it. She wanted to try out the program, see if it was absolutely for real before she began to recommend it and even to promote it on her own radio program. And the next thing you know, she had over $10,000 in credit card debt totally eliminated, and on her 3 credit reports it says accounts closed at lender request. And since then, that has turned into $23,000 for her. Absolutely, totally legal. Well, that caught my attention. So I got in touch with David Fairmont. I began to do my own research. I began to look into this. And we're going to talk about this more in depth on the program this Wednesday. But here's what both David and I want to say up front. This may not be for everybody. You have to make your own individual choice. But you can know it is completely legal and it is okay what is being done. And you will hear him say in the 13 years he's been running this program, he has a success rate of a success rate of 100%. How do you get more than that? But David, welcome to our time here in this pre-recording. We're going to be delighted to have you on the program this Wednesday. So tell us a little bit more about, how you got involved in this, what the program does, and what it means for the people.
Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate it, and it's an honor to be on with you. First, for those who are listening, please note that the Liberty Debt Cancellation System is only for credit cards and unsecured debts issued by United States banks and institutions. Cards and debts issued by banks in other countries should be able to have their debts canceled as well using similar methods, but the Liberty system only cancels debts on credit cards and unsecured loans issued by institutions in the USA. However, we also provide the world's best trust for asset protection, for freedom from income tax, for estate planning, avoidance of probate, and it is based in the common law, which goes everywhere on this planet, is operable in every country, is not subject to the millions of statutory laws, and is one of the very best asset protection instruments for operating in the sovereign area. So that we can also talk about on Wednesday. But for now, it's a great joy to celebrate with you the massively ascending frequencies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
on the planet right now.
Here's what's interesting. We're truly going through a shift and change, and it's the everyday people like you and me that are beginning to wake up and find out what's available for us. When we talk about programs like this, sometimes your first reaction is, well, what do you mean? Am I just, bilking the system and stuff like that? No, what you're getting to do is to learn what the extremely wealthy have known for a long time and how they get by. What you will also learn how is that we have what is called a banking cartel system that runs in a fraudulent manner that has basically imposed a slavery financial system upon us. And in essence, what it does is that we have, in so many words, become their slaves. And we are basically subject to what they do to us. And it's an oppression that is placed upon the people. And we are the ones who now have the opportunity to step up because this information is becoming available to all of us, the everyday folks. And David, it's what you had to say. It's not just the debt elimination, but it's also basically the trust program under common law. That's why you get people who are multi-millionaires and billionaires and they don't pay hardly any taxes because they understand this. And it's kind of been kept secret and away from the masses. And what you're doing now is stepping up and saying, hey, wait a minute. We don't have to be victims to this system anymore. We have the right to step up. We'll talk about how it works, why it can be beneficial for you, when you may not want to use it or if it may not be good for you. We'll also talk about why it is legal and why in the end it doesn't really make any difference to the bank whether you use this system or even if you file a bankruptcy, because in the end they're wiping out the debt is what they're doing, but in this system it is far, far better for you. David, what other final comments would you like to make, in this introductory time before we have you on the program on Wednesday night?
Yes, Dave. Well, just in essence, using the Liberty system, I personally successfully canceled over $50,000 of credit card debt involving 7 cards, Visas, MasterCards, and Discover back in 2002. I never had to go to court, and I've not had a problem with them since. The system has continued to work for everyone to this day, and it has a proven track record. So it allows one to legally and totally cancel Visa, MasterCard, and Discover debts and other, basically any kind of unsecured loan under the Federal Reserve System without bankruptcy. My question to the listeners is, why settle for debt consolidation, negotiation, reduction, modification, or any other kind of compromise when you can eliminate it 100% without bankruptcy? It's easy. Anyone with access to a computer can do it. You just follow some simple ABC instructions to put your name and personal information into some powerful pages and send them certified mail. No attorneys needed. It's quick. It can be done in 1 hour per account and inexpensive. So the program works. It's got a 100% success rate. As you know, the main 2 wheels of the dark cabal enslavement mechanisms have been debts and taxes, and these are the 2 areas in which we help people, because people, after all, are drowning under the influence of these influences.
Absolutely.
I wanted to honor those who are listening. I want to thank the listeners for your spiritual contributions to an unprecedented historic awakening that is taking place. There's a book I'm just going to mention briefly. It's been out since the 90s, but many people still have never read it, and it's still even more relevant today than it has ever been, and that's The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, which explains the monetary and Federal Reserve system. For those who have not read it, highly recommended. Then you will understand why you can legally cancel these unsecured debts under the Fed system.
It's interesting,
So
David.
it'll be my privilege, Dave, to be speaking to these shining lights and way showers.
Great, thank you. My apologies there for interrupting you, but it was just last week on the radio program and in the newsletter that I talked about that book by G. Everett Griffin called, The Creature from Jekyll Island, his new updated version that's only been out for about 3 years. And I even played about a 7-minute video clip in the newsletter last week that he was being interviewed by somebody else. And he clearly explains this fraudulent system, this corrupt system that has been placed upon us by this international banking cartel that keeps us in forms of slavery, and this is an opportunity for us to wake up and to free ourselves. There are few things in our lives that create the oppression of what I call a slavery debt. You wake up in the morning and you're wondering if you're going to get the calls. You're wondering, can you really do this? You're wondering, do you go to work this week and you're just going to barely get by? And it just seems to weigh on you and be there day after day, month after month, year after year. And that's an oppression that we should never be underneath, especially when it's being imposed upon us in a fraudulent manner. So folks, I encourage you to join us on the radio program on Wednesday night, and this is just a precursor to that. And David, it'll be a fortune to have you there. Okay, so thanks a lot. Anything else you want to say quickly?
That's it. Thanks so much.
Okay, great. We'll look forward to having you on the program Wednesday night. Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Bye bye. Bye bye, folks.